I woke from surgery to 147 notifications. One was a 27-minute boathouse clip of my family reading a transfer document signed in my bedroom. "We've been here 48 hours, my mother said. "That's constructive possession." Then the notary's shadow crossed the camera. I knew that shadow, and the secret that would ruin them. My name is Haley Morgan. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a director of compliance at Riverton Asset Works. My job is to find the cracks in the system before they become chasms. I audit, I verify, I document, and I enforce the rules. The rules are everything. They are the barrier between order and the kind of chaos that can swallow you whole. I was lying in a recovery room at Everfield Medical, 90 minutes from home, drifting in the gray fog of anesthesia. The surgery, a laparoscopic procedure to remove an ovarian cyst the size of a grapefruit, was over. The pain was a dull, distant throb, managed by a drip I could barely see. The air smelled of sterile wipes and warm blankets. I was floating, disconnected, and for a moment, I was peaceful. Then my phone, resting on the adjustable bedside table, began to vibrate. It didn't just buzz once, it was a frantic, insistent, rattling rhythm against the plastic. A tremor of panic cut through the morphine haze. I fumbled for it, my fingers thick and uncooperative. The screen was a blinding white light, a chaotic list of missed calls and messages. 147 notifications. Most were from my team at Riverton. Predictable check-ins, but one thread was from my neighbor, Gus Halloran. Gus is a 70-year-old retired sheriff who minds his own business, except when he believes it's his absolute duty not to. His texts were short, escalating from polite inquiry to alarm. 4:05 p.m. Haley, you expecting company U-Haul just pulled in? 4:20 p.m. Truck is backed up to the garage. People unloading. 4:45 p.m. They're at the front door. Looks like they're changing the lock. 5:10 p.m. Haley, call me. This doesn't feel right. They're inside. My heart hammered against my ribs, a painful, sharp beat that ached against fresh internal stitches. I swiped out of the messages, my thumbprint barely registering on the slick glass. I opened my home security app. I bought the Lakehouse 2 years ago. It cost me $1.2 million. Every cent earned from building a career designed to be a fortress against my past. My childhood was a tornado of my mother's emotional debts, my brother's failed schemes, and my sister's bottomless need for validation. The house on Northwind Lake was my sanctuary. It was my proof of escape. It was where the chaos stopped at the property line. Because I am a compliance director, my sanctuary is monitored. 7 feeds. I pressed the icon, and the screen split into a grid of silent, high-definition motion. The gate, a large, orange and white U-Haul truck, was parked on my gravel driveway, its rear wheels churning ruts into the landscaping. The back porch, my wicker furniture, the cushions I'd had custom-made in navy blue, was piled against the sliding glass door to make room. The living room, empty, but the feed from the kitchen showed the source of the activity. My mother, Marion, stood at my kitchen island, her back to the camera. She was wiping down the quartzite countertop as if she owned it. My brother, Cole, was hauling a heavy box labeled studio toward the library. My sister, Bethany, and her husband, Derek, were visible through the hallway feed, pointing at the master bedroom door. I tapped the kitchen feed, expanding it. I hit the audio icon. The clinical silence of the hospital room was broken by their voices, tinny and triumphant, invading my small, safe space. "Derek, make sure the new lock is calibrated to our phones before you do anything else," Marion instructed. Her voice crisp. She was in charge. She was always in charge. "Already on it," Derek called back. "The old system is completely disabled." I watched, frozen, my breath catching in my throat. This was not a visit. This was an occupation. I swiped to the upstairs hall feed. Bethany was peeling the custom vinyl nameplate Haley's Suite from the master bedroom door. She held up a new laminated sign made with a cheap label maker. It read, "Mom, Dad." "It just looks right, doesn't it?" Bethany said, her voice giddy. She pressed the label onto my door. They had brought coolers, suitcases, boxes. A new, gleaming smart lock sat on my counter, its packaging discarded on the floor. Taped to my refrigerator, on my $60,000 Sub-Zero, was a piece of paper. The camera zoomed. Property of the Mercer family estate. Mercer, my mother's maiden name. The name she used when she talked about the legacy we were all supposedly part of. A legacy of bad debts and broken promises. I went back to the kitchen feed and scrubbed the timeline. I watched them arrive. Use a key I never gave them. It must have been copied and then immediately disable my security. Derek, who works in title services, went straight to the smart lock panel in the utility closet. He knew exactly what he was doing. On the kitchen counter, next to the discarded lock, was a stack of papers. The top page was titled in a bold, serif font, Mercer Legacy Allocation, Minutes of the Family Meeting. My hand went to the call button for the nurse, but I stopped. What would I say? My family was stealing my house. It sounded insane. I navigated, my fingers shaking, to my phone's encrypted vault. This was my real security, the digital safe where I kept my life, title deeds, trust documents, brokerage accounts. I ran the biometric scan. My digital ownership papers, the irrevocable trust I had specifically created to protect this asset, were all there, untouched, secure. The house was not in my name. It was owned by the Northwind Irrevocable Trust, an entity I had spent $50,000 in legal fees to make bulletproof. I was the sole trustee. The trust had specific clauses, written by the best lawyer I could find, including one I remembered verbatim: no family occupancy without prior written consent of the trustee. They couldn't steal it, not legally. So what was this? I returned to the live feeds. The kitchen was active. A new figure had entered. She was heavy-set, wearing a dark blue windbreaker, and she was carrying a briefcase. She stood by the counter, laying out documents. My blood turned to ice. The angle was poor, but the badge clipped to her jacket was unmistakable. It read, Notary Public. The woman turned, and I saw her face. Shay Doyle. I knew Shay Doyle. She was a freelance notary who had submitted paperwork to Riverton's approved vendor list 6 months ago. I had personally rejected her application. Her logbook was a mess, full of inconsistent entries, missing signatures, and backdated acknowledgments. She was a compliance nightmare. She was a fraud waiting to happen, and she was in my kitchen, notarizing a document, while my family watched. "This makes it official," Marion said, her voice swelling with emotion. My stomach heaved. The dull throb of my surgery intensified into a sharp, searing fire. I gripped the plastic railing of the hospital bed. I needed Atticus. I looked around the recovery bay. A nurse was adjusting another patient's blanket. "Nurse," I croaked. My voice was raw. She hurried over, her face a mask of professional concern. "Ms. Morgan, are you in pain? Your heart rate is climbing." I looked at the monitor beside me. The green line was spiking, the number jumping, 105, 110, 118. "My phone," I whispered, holding it up. I need to make a call. It's an emergency." "Of course," she said soothingly, probably assuming I was calling a worried relative. She handed me the small, attached table with my water cup and the phone. I dismissed her with a nod and dialed. My fingers flew, hitting the number for Atticus Vale, my attorney, the architect of my trust. He didn't answer. I left a message, my voice tight and strange. "Atticus, it's Haley. They're in the house, my family. They're trying to take it. They have a notary. Atticus, call me the second you get this. It's happening right now." I hung up and went back to the camera app, the 27-minute clip from the boathouse. The one that had been at the top of my notifications was waiting. I had been too afraid to watch it. I pressed play. The camera angle was wide, showing the covered slip, my boat, and the beautiful teak deck where I drank my coffee. My whole family was there. Marion, Cole, Bethany, Derek, even my father, Frank, who had been silent until now, stood in the back, his hands in his pockets, a passive observer to the coup. A bottle of champagne, my champagne, from my wine fridge was popped. Marion held up a glass. Her face flushed with a victory I didn't understand. She raised her glass. The boathouse feed had the best audio. "A toast," Marion said, her voice clear and strong. "To the Mercer legacy, to what we have built. They thought they could keep this from us. But blood is blood. The house is where it belongs." She turned to my father. "Frank, we did it." She then looked directly at the boathouse camera, the small green light indicating it was recording. She smiled, a cold, terrible smile. "Congratulations, Mercer family," she announced to the empty air, to the camera, to me. "The Lakehouse is ours." The nurse rushed back as the heart monitor screamed, a long, piercing, continuous beep. My vision tunneled. The physical pain from my incision was nothing, a pinprick compared to the sudden, gaping wound of this betrayal. They had waited until I was unconscious, until I was cut open and helpless, to make their move. The monitor wailed, but all I could hear was the pop of that champagne cork. The nurse stabilized my heart rate, her professional calm a stark contrast to the acid rising in my throat. I waved her off, my mind rebooting, the fog of anesthesia replaced by the cold, sharp clarity of violation. The pain in my abdomen was a grounding, white-hot reminder that I was vulnerable, and they had used that vulnerability as their key. My fingers, no longer trembling, moved across the phone screen with practiced efficiency. My job is compliance. I live in a world of procedures, audits, and evidence chains. My family had just declared war. Assuming I was a patient, they forgot I am a director. I sent a single, high-priority ping to Atticus Vale's secure messaging app, the red flag icon, the one we only use for an active breach. My message was 4 words: injunction, Northwind, now, call. My phone buzzed almost immediately. It was Atticus. "Haley, I got your message. What do you mean, they're in the house?" His voice was gravelly, all sleepiness gone. "Atticus, they're occupying it," I said, my voice low and flat, the monitor beeping steadily beside me. "My mother, brother, sister, and her husband, they've brought a U-Haul. They changed the locks. They're celebrating on camera." A beat of stunned silence. "They changed the locks." "Affirmative. They've also posted a sign claiming it as the Mercer family estate. And Atticus, they brought a notary." "A what?" "Shay Doyle. I recognized her. She's fraudulent. They filmed a ceremony in the boathouse, popping champagne, and my mother announced they had achieved constructive possession after 48 hours. "Jesus," Atticus muttered. "That's not just trespassing, that's conspiracy." "Okay. First, I'm filing for an emergency temporary restraining order. I need a declaration from you. I'll send the link. Fill it out. I need the who, what, and when." "I'm on it," I said. "I'm already building the evidence file." I hung up and my fingers started a new rhythm. First, I called my part-time housekeeper, Ray. She answers on the second ring. Always. "Hi, Ms. Morgan. Is everything okay?" "You're not on the schedule." "Ray, it's Haley. Quick question. Are you at the Lakehouse? Or did you schedule any cleaning or maintenance this weekend?" "No. Ma'am," she said, confused. "You told me you'd be at Everfield until at least Tuesday. I wasn't scheduled to come until next Wednesday. Why is something wrong?" "No, I just needed to confirm." "Thank you. Ray, I'll call you next week to reschedule." I hung up. Baseline established, no authorized personnel. Second, I called Gus Halloran. He picked up immediately. "Haley, thank God. I was about to call the sheriff myself." "What in the hell is going on over there?" "Gus, I'm in the hospital. I just got out of surgery. Tell me exactly what you saw. When did they arrive?" "Friday night," he said, his old sheriff voice kicking in. "Around 8:30. I thought it was you, but the truck was a U-Haul. Then I saw Marion directing traffic, and that brother of yours, Cole. They started unloading. I figured you'd called them for help, but they've been there ever since. Darked out the windows facing my property. They arrived Friday evening. I checked my watch. It was Sunday evening. That was their 48 hours. Gus, they are not supposed to be there. I did not invite them. I knew it, he hissed. Haley, what do you need? The gate camera. It recorded the truck. Did you see the plate? Wrote it down myself. Arizona plate, AZT 5593. Thank you, Gus. I'm handling it legally. Please, do not engage with them. You got it, but my cameras are pointed at your drive. Haley. Just in case. I hung up. Timeline established entry coincided with my hospitalization. I forwarded the license plate to Atticus, Redwill County Sheriff. Report illegal entry and trespassing. Atticus replied, done. Now. The trust. Send me the executed copy. I didn't need to send it. I knew where it was. I opened my digital vault again. Northwind Irrevocable Trust. Dated May 12, 2022. I scrolled past the legal boilerplate, past the asset schedules, to the clause I had Atticus draft and redraft until it was iron. Article 4, Section 2. Occupancy and use, the grantor, Haley Morgan, shall retain use and enjoyment of the property. No other individual, related or unrelated, including but not limited to any immediate family member of the grantor, shall be permitted to occupy or reside at the property for any length of time without the express, prior, and fully executed written consent of the trustee. I am the trustee. I screenshotted the clause and emailed it to Atticus's paralegal for the TRO filing. Next, I checked the logs for my security system. My smart home app was still connected via the cloud, even if they'd disabled the local controller. The last entry on the smart lock log read, Error, connection failed. The entry before that, admin master lockout, engaged by unauthorized device, they hadn't just changed the code. They had ripped out the hardware. The geofence perimeter, however, was still active on the cloud. It logged all Wi-Fi-enabled devices that crossed the property line. I saw 4 new phones, Cole, Bethany, Derek, and one labeled Marion Mercer. She was using her maiden name. I opened my spam folder. My defenses are layered. Any email containing the words Mercer, family, investment, or legacy gets automatically filtered into a review queue. It's usually just my mother's newsletters about her genealogy projects. Not today. An email from the Redwill County Water and Power Authority, sent Saturday morning. Subject confirmation of your service transfer. Dear Mercer Family LLC, it began. We have received your request to transfer utility services at 422 Northwind Point into your name, effective immediately. They had forged a request to transfer my utilities. They had formed a limited liability company. This was premeditated. This was organized. This was Derek. His signature was all over this. He worked in title services. He knew how to grease the wheels, how to make a fraudulent claim look like a simple administrative change. I saved the email as a PDF. Evidence items 04. Fraudulent utility transfer. I needed more. I needed the digital fingerprints. I sent a text to Ivy Tran, my lead IT engineer at Riverton. It was 10 p.m. on a Sunday. Ivy, personal emergency. Need your expertise. I have a network-attached storage device at my home that has been compromised. The intruders are on the network. Can you access it remotely and pull metadata from a specific directory? Ivy's reply was instant. Give me the IP and credentials. What am I looking for? They created a file. I saw it on the camera. Titled Mercer Legacy Allocation. I need the creation timestamp, author, and any edit history. Pull the hash. I need to prove when it was made, and by whom. Running trace. Ivy replied, got it. This is a simple Word doc. Haley, they're amateurs. Author, Derek C. Last edited Sunday, 2:03 a.m. Creation timestamp, Saturday, 11:52 p.m. I'm pulling the full hash log from the NAS now. You'll have it in 5 minutes. They had been drafting their minutes in the middle of the night. I went back to the camera feeds. I needed to see the notarization again. I scrubbed to the kitchen feed. There she was. Shay Doyle. She was laying out her notary journal. My mother was signing a document. I zoomed in. The timestamp on the bottom of the feed was digital, burned into the video. Sunday, 02:17:03 a.m. They held a formal notarized signing ceremony at 17 minutes past 2 in the morning. No legitimate notary works at 2:17 in the morning. No legitimate document is signed at that hour unless it's a deathbed confession. I began to assemble the chain. 1 photo of the U-Haul, license plate match. 2 video of the lock being forcibly removed and replaced. 3 Gus's testimony of their arrival. Ray's testimony of no authorization. 4. The Northwind Irrevocable Trust. Article 4, Section 2. 5. The fraudulent utility transfer request to Mercer Family LLC. 6. The digital metadata from the NAS, showing Derek creating the minutes at night. 7. The HOA bylaws, which I also keep in my vault. Article 9. No short-term or long-term occupancy by non-owners is permitted for more than 72 hours without explicit HOA board approval. 8. The video file. 2:17 a.m. A fraudulent notary, whose commission I would verify was expired, engaging in a criminal act, I packaged all 8 items into a compressed, encrypted file and sent it to Atticus. My phone rang. Atticus. "I've seen it," he said. His voice was cold. All business. "This is phenomenal work. Haley, this isn't just a TRO. This is fraud, conspiracy, and uttering a forged instrument. They're trying to steal my house. Atticus." "They're not going to," he said, a sharp edge in his tone. "I'm dispatching a process server with the 24-hour notice to quit. They'll be served by morning. The TRO hearing will be requested for the earliest possible slot, likely Tuesday or Wednesday, given the evidence of lock-breaking." My mother said constructive possession. I repeated, the words tasting like ash. "She thinks staying 48 hours makes it hers." I heard Atticus laugh, a dry, humorless sound. "Constructive possession is a complex legal doctrine. Haley, it's not a finder's keeper's rule for squatters who bring their own champagne. They think they've established residency. But you don't establish residency with a U-Haul at 8 p.m. on a Friday, a fraudulent LLC, and a fake notary at 2 in the morning. They're building a house of cards." He paused, and I could hear him typing. "If they're trying to build a case on constructive possession," Atticus said, his voice hardening, "we're going to demolish it with a paper trail." The beep of the heart monitor was the only sound in my room, a steady rhythm against the chaos unfolding on my phone. The physical pain from the surgery was a sharp, localized fire below my navel, but it was nothing compared to the cold, spreading numbness of watching my family, my own blood, dissect my life like a property they had already acquired. This wasn't a spontaneous act. This wasn't a desperate, confused misunderstanding. This was a plan. And as I lay there, I could trace the blueprint of their entitlement back through the years. I swiped to the boathouse camera. It was, technically, a separate structure, with its own small library and a guest suite above the boat slip. It was my favorite place, the quietest part of the property. Cole was in there now, my brother, the artist. He was walking through the library with a measuring tape, his movements wide and proprietary. He stopped at the wall of windows, the one that faced north over the water, the one that captured the most beautiful, consistent light. He held the tape up, then jotted in a notebook. He was measuring for his studio. Cole, the family prodigy, the sensitive one, who had spent 15 years failing to launch a career. His paintings were technically competent but emotionally hollow, and his true talent was for accruing debt. He currently owed 6 months' rent on a studio in the city, a fact I knew because he'd tried to hit me up for it last month. "Haley, it's an investment," he'd said. "Just a bridge loan until my gallery show." There was no gallery show. There was never a gallery show. That library, with its perfect passive north light, was the room he'd always claimed he needed to finally be great. I swiped to the back porch. Bethany was there, holding her phone up, turning in a slow circle. She was filming. She was, no doubt, capturing content for her Life at the Lake influencer fantasy. She wasn't just my sister. She was a brand, or at least she desperately wanted to be, a brand built on lattes, borrowed luxury, and a curated life she had no intention of paying for herself. This house wasn't a home to her. It was a backdrop. It was $1 million set. Their motives were so pathetic, so predictable. Cole wanted the studio. Bethany wanted the set. And my mother, Marion, she wanted the deed. She wanted the Mercer legacy. My mind flashed back 8 years. I was 26, just starting at Riverton, trying to climb out of the financial hole of my youth. I needed to build a credit history. My mother, in a rare moment of seemingly selfless support, had co-signed for a credit card. It had an $8,000 limit. I used it to buy my first professional wardrobe and a reliable laptop. I was grateful. I was also meticulous. I paid the balance in full every month, and I paid the entire card off and closed the account within 2 years. That was 6 years ago, to this day. Marion refers to that co-signature as her startup investment in my career. I was your first backer, Haley, she'd say at Thanksgiving, raising her glass. I saw your potential. I put in the seed money, $8,000, co-signed, not gifted, and paid off immediately. That, in her mind, made her a venture capitalist. That, in her mind, gave her equity in my entire future. My $1.2 million house was just the maturation of her initial investment, and my father, Frank, I saw him on the kitchen feed, sitting at the island, drinking a beer, silently watching Derek install the new lock. Frank, the peacemaker, the man whose entire philosophy was to avoid conflict by never having an opinion. His silence was his participation. He was the essential, passive ingredient in all of Marion's schemes, the second signature that made the joint account possible, the warm body that made it a family decision. He would never start the fire, but he would happily stand by it, warming his hands. I had seen this play before. This was the city apartment, escalated. 5 years ago, I had a condo downtown. I was sent to our Singapore office for a 3-month compliance audit. Stay at your place, Marion had chirped. Just to check the mail, water the plants. I agreed. I was, stupidly, still trying to believe they could be trusted. When I returned, exhausted and jet-lagged, I found a key-code lockbox on my own front door. My neighbor stopped me in the hall, her face tight with anger. The party last weekend was the last straw, she'd snapped. The noise, the smoking, it's a disgrace. I was baffled. I unlocked the door. My apartment was different. The bedding was cheap and new. There were laminated instruction cards on the appliances. On my coffee table, there was a guest book filled with comments from strangers. Wonderful stay. Great location. A bit noisy on Friday, but 5 stars. They had run my apartment as an illegal, unpermitted Airbnb for the entire summer. They had booked it solid. They had pocketed the cash, which I later found out went to pay off one of Cole's bridge loans. I had never felt such cold, quiet rage. I evicted them. I changed the locks. I had the building security bar them from the premises. And that night, I called Atticus Vale for the first time. I want to talk about trusts, I'd said. An irrevocable trust. I want to build a fortress. I want my next asset to be untouchable. The Lakehouse was that fortress, and they had just landed on its shores with battering rams. I looked at the kitchen feed again, zooming in on the document they'd left on the counter. The Mercer legacy allocation. The light was catching it just right, and there, in the preamble, in a bold, underlined font, was a single sentence. This asset, built from Mercer blood, shall be returned to the family collective. Mercer blood. The words hit me like a physical blow. I remembered the day I gave them the tour, the only day I had invited them. I was proud of the house. I had saved. I had planned. I had sacrificed. I thought, perhaps, they might finally see me. Haley, the person who had built this. Marion had stood on the back porch, the same porch Bethany was now filming, and looked out at the water. She didn't say, "Congratulations." She didn't say, "It's beautiful." She put her hand on my arm, a gesture of proprietary pride, and said, You see, Haley, you built all this from good, strong Mercer blood. She had claimed it even then. My work, my discipline, my sleepless nights, she had absorbed it all into her narrative, recasting my success as her own genetic dividend. And now, that casual, arrogant phrase was their legal justification. It was the thesis of their fraudulent document. My pain, the physical and the emotional, swirled together, clarifying into a single, sharp point of action. My body had been invaded by a cyst. My house had been invaded by my family. Both required a clinical, precise removal. My logic, the compliance director's mind, took over. The fortress had protocols. I was still logged into the security system's root admin panel, a level of access Derek, with his consumer-level IT knowledge, wouldn't even know existed. He had disabled the local hub. He hadn't disabled the cloud mainframe. I watched the boathouse feed. Cole was now unrolling a large, blank canvas in the middle of my library floor. He was preparing to make a mess. He was preparing to create, my thumb, steady now, moved to a small, red-bordered icon on the app. It was labeled Emergency Lockdown. I tapped it. A submenu appeared. Gate, main house, boathouse. I tapped boathouse, on the screen, in perfect, high-definition silence. I watched the heavy-duty steel security shutter, the one I had installed to protect the library's art and expensive electronics, slide smoothly out of its recess. It sealed the boathouse's main door. A moment later, the electronic lock on the glass library door clicked shut with a visible jolt, a piercing, high-frequency alarm. One I knew was deafening inside the boathouse began to flash. The live feed showed Cole dropping his canvas. He spun around, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. He ran to the library door, pulled it. It was locked. He ran to the main shutter, pounding on the steel. The camera, designed for security, was now my instrument of consequence. He was trapped. The alarm wailed, audible even through the phone's tiny speaker, and I watched him, my first invader, neutralized. The alarm from the boathouse was a high-decibel shriek that cut across the water. On my camera grid, I saw them. My mother, Derek, and Bethany stumbled out onto the main porch, disoriented, squinting toward the boathouse where I knew Cole was now pounding on a locked steel shutter. His panic was a small, satisfying appetizer, but the main course was arriving. Atticus had been efficient. The 911 call reporting a break-in, combined with Gus's validation, had bypassed the usual procedural delays. My gate camera, the one they hadn't disabled, flared with the reflected wash of red and blue strobes. 2 Redwill County Sheriff's vehicles crunched onto my gravel drive. My phone rang. An unknown local number. I stabbed the answer button. "This is Haley Morgan." "Ms. Morgan, this is Deputy Allen with the Redwill County Sheriff's Office. We're at the gate of 422 Northwind Point. We've got a call about a possible break-in, but there's a group of people here claiming they're your family. They say they live here." I watched the gate feed. My mother, Marion, was in full performance mode. She had her hand on her heart, her face a mask of wounded, maternal concern. Derek stood beside her, holding a sheaf of papers. Bethany, predictably, had her phone out, already recording the officers. "Deputy," I said, my voice tight. "They are trespassing. I am the sole owner. I am in the hospital, and I have not given them permission. Ma'am," the man here, Derek, just handed me a notarized document. "It looks like a gift transfer. He says you signed the house over to them. This morning." The audacity, the sheer criminal arrogance. "Deputy," I said, forcing calm into my voice, "that document is a forgery. The signature is fraudulent. I am physically incapable of signing anything. I need you to initiate a FaceTime call with me. Right now." There was a pause. "Okay, stand by." My screen flickered and the call request came through. I accepted. The deputy's face appeared. Stern, late 40s, clearly tired of this drama already. "Ma'am," I propped myself up on the hospital pillow. the movement sending a jolt of fire through my incision. I held the phone up. "Officer Allen, my name is Haley Morgan. This," I said, panning the phone slowly, "is Recovery Room 309 at Everfield Medical. That," I pointed to the clear bag, "is my IV drip. My surgeon is Dr. Alistair Pace. I underwent a major laparoscopic procedure yesterday. I was under general anesthesia at the time I supposedly signed that document. I have not been within 90 minutes of my home in 2 days." The deputy's eyes narrowed. He was no longer just dealing with a family spat. He turned the phone around, and my mother's face filled my screen. She looked shocked, as if she'd seen a ghost. "Haley," she gasped. "Honey, you're confused. The doctors, the medication, you told us to do this. You wanted this. You told us to come." "That is a lie," I said, the words coming out like ice. "She's sick," Marion said, turning to the deputy. "The lawyers, they've twisted her around. She promised us. My daughter promised me this house." "Officer," a new voice said, "I had Atticus on a 3-way call, and he had just unmuted." "Officer Allen, my name is Atticus Vale. I am counsel for Ms. Morgan and the trustee of the Northwind Irrevocable Trust, which is the sole legal owner of that property. The document you are holding is fraudulent." "That's a hell of an allegation, Counselor," the deputy said. "It's a fact, sir," Atticus said. "I am, as we speak, emailing your dispatch the public record for the notary on that document, a Miss Shea Doyle. Her commission, number 80325, was permanently revoked by the state 11 months ago for multiple counts of fraud and notarizing for absent parties. What you are holding isn't a transfer, it's a felony." There was a beautiful, stretching silence. I watched Derek's face go pale on the grainy gate cam. He knew that name. He knew her status. He had hired her because she was dirty. "We have a video!" Bethany suddenly shrieked, shoving her own phone toward the deputy. Haley said it. "We have proof." She fumbled with her screen and played a clip. It was from the barbecue Gus had hosted back in March. My voice, clear and happy. "This place, it's a dream. I'm just so glad we can finally use it. This lake is ours." "See?" Bethany said, triumphant. Before I could speak, Gus Halloran, my neighbor, stepped into the frame. He must have been listening on his scanner. "Deputy Allen," Gus said, his retired sheriff's voice cutting through the noise. "Gus Halloran. I live next door. What that girl isn't showing you is the rest of the video. She cut it." Gus held up his own phone. He played the same scene, but longer. My voice. "This lake is ours." I then turned to a group of women standing next to me. Women I recognized from the shelter. "Ours," meaning the women at the Lake Foundation. "I am so thrilled to host the first annual Survivors Retreat here this summer. This house is for you." The deputy looked from Gus's phone to Bethany's, his expression turning to stone. "And one more thing, officer," Atticus's voice added. "I'm sending you the affidavit from the Northwind HOA. The Mercer Family LLC, an entity registered by Mr. Derek Kane there, had its application for residency formally denied last week for failure to provide proof of ownership. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a premeditated, failed attempt to defraud the HOA." The pieces clicked into place. The deputies looked at each other. "All right," Allen said, his voice now devoid of any sympathy. "This is a civil matter. We can't evict them, but—" He looked at the front door, where the fresh, silver smart lock gleamed. "You replaced the locks." "It's our house," Derek muttered. "You broke the existing lock to gain entry." That," the deputy said, "is destruction of property. That is breaking and entering. You are all trespassing, and you need to vacate the premises. Now." This was it. They had lost. But then, Bethany. She held her phone up high. The red live icon was glowing. She wasn't just recording the police. She was broadcasting. "Please, everyone, help us," she cried, her voice breaking into a perfect practice sob. "My sister, Haley Morgan. She's sick. She just had surgery. And she's confused. The lawyers are taking advantage of her. They're trying to kick our mother out of the house our mother built. They're throwing a sick woman's family out on the street. Please, share this. They're stealing our home. My phone, separate from the FaceTime call, began to explode. Text messages, social media tags, the link to her live stream. I clicked it. 5,000 viewers. 10,000. The comment stream was a river of vitriol, all aimed at me. Monster. How can you do this to your own mother? You deserve to be sick. Haley Morgan, director at Riverton Asset Works, is a heartless pig. She was doxing me. She was painting me as the villain, and I was stuck in a hospital bed, attached to a morphine drip, unable to defend myself. I immediately texted Leah Boone, my crisis PR consultant. Leah, code red. My sister is broadcasting a defamatory live stream. My address, my name, my job, authorizing you for full countermeasure. Evidence file forthcoming. Leah's reply was instant. On it. Do not engage. Say nothing. I'll handle the narrative. On the gate feed. The deputies were leaving. They had given the order, but they couldn't physically drag them out without a judge's signature. They're gone, I heard Derek say, his voice thin. Marion, we have to pack. This is over. No, Marion said. Her voice was low, terrifying. She looked at the departing police cars. It's not, that officer said, civil matter. The hearing for that TRO won't be until Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. We got here Friday at 8 p.m. If we just stay one more night, we hit the 72-hour mark. She was still clinging to her constructive possession fantasy. She believed that if they could just hold the line, some magical law would grant them ownership. We are not leaving, she commanded, turning to her fractured family. We barricade the door. We hold this house. It's ours. They retreated inside. The blinds snapped shut. The house went dark. I was alone in the recovery room, the adrenaline fading, the surgical pain rushing back in. They were still in my house, and the world thought I was the monster. I stared at the grid of camera feeds, most of them now useless, showing only the interior of dark rooms. But the exterior cameras were still live, and one of them, the one on the peak of the main roof, caught something, a new light, a small, blinking red light, high above the property. It wasn't specify. It was a drone. It wasn't mine. It wasn't the police. It was hovering, nearly silent. Its gimbal-mounted camera aimed directly at the house. The infrared sensor flashed, a tiny pulse in the darkness. It was watching them. It was recording everything. Someone else was gathering the truth. I did not sleep in the hospital. I dozed. A 20-minute cycle of morphine-hazed static and jarring adrenaline. At 6 a.m. on Monday, I paged my surgeon, Dr. Pace. I need a discharge, I said when he arrived, my voice already dressed in its boardroom monotone. Haley, he said, checking my chart. You just had a significant procedure. We recommend another 24 hours of observation. Doctor, my home has been illegally occupied. The stress of being here, helpless, is causing my heart rate to spike far more than sitting in a controlled environment, managing the situation. You can see the logs. I am a compliance director. I am going to my lawyer's office. Not a war zone. I am safe. I need to go. Please, sign the papers. He looked at me, at the heart monitor that had indeed been screaming all night, and then at the pile of legal-sized notepads I had already filled. He sighed. Against medical advice. With medical understanding, I countered. I am in less pain now than when I arrived. I know the signs of infection, and I will be at a desk, not moving. It is, objectively, safer for my recovery. He nodded, a small, tired smile. All right, Director, I'll sign. But if you feel faint, or the pain spikes above a 7, you call me. An hour later, I was walking, slowly and painfully, into the glass and steel conference room of Atticus Vale. I was still in my discharge-clothes sweatpants and a zip-up hoodie, but my mind was in a suit of armor, The conference table was already a war room. Atticus was there, along with a paralegal, and my PR consultant, Leah Boone, was on the main video screen. "First," Atticus said, sliding a coffee I couldn't drink toward me. "The drone?" "Whose was it?" I asked, settling into a chair with a quiet wince. "The best news we could have asked for," he said. "It wasn't random. It belongs to a private investigator named Rhea Calder, and she's already on our side." He tapped a key, and a new face appeared on the video screen. She was sharp, mid-50s, with a face that looked like it had seen every possible lie. "Ms. Morgan," she said, her voice a low gravel. "Rhea Calder." "Rhea," I nodded. "You're a welcome sight. Were you watching my family?" "No," she said. "I was watching your house. The Northwind HOA hired me 3 weeks ago. We've had a string of high-value properties with guest problems, people showing up, claiming to be cousins or grandkids, staying for weeks, throwing parties. We suspected a ring of high-end squatters, or maybe an insurance fraud scheme. Your house was on my list of at-risk properties high value. Single owner, often empty. When your family's U-Haul arrived Friday night, they tripped my alert. I've been recording them ever since." "What did you get?" Atticus asked, leaning forward. "Everything," Rhea said, a flicker of professional pride in her eyes. "The U-Haul, the forced lock change, the deputies arriving and leaving, the live stream, but most importantly, I got the money shot." She shared her screen. It was high resolution. Thermal imaging footage from the boathouse, date stamped at 2:12 a.m. My brother, Cole, and the notary, Shay Doyle, were standing on the small deck, just out of sight of my own camera. Cole was handing her a thick white envelope. "The audio is even better," Rhea said. The drone's parabolic microphone was excellent. We heard Shay's voice, nervous. "This is risky. At this hour, without her here." And Cole's reply, sharp, arrogant. "Just sign the damn thing. Derek says the signature is all that matters. Sign it so we hit the timeline. There's $5,000 in that envelope. Do it." $5,000, Atticus whistled. "That's felony bribery on top of the forgery." "I have more," Rhea said. "I ran Shay Doyle, just as you found. Atticus, her commission was revoked, but I dug deeper. She was sued, civilly, 2 years ago, for notarizing a will for a man who was comatose. She has a pattern. She's a professional ghost signer." "And she's in my boathouse," I muttered. "There's more," I said, turning to Atticus. "Ivy Tran, my IT engineer." "She's a goddamn wizard," Atticus said, holding up a printout. "Ivy didn't just pull the metadata. She pulled the document history." He slid the paper across the table. It was a log from my network-attached storage. Bethany, in her infinite stupidity, had logged onto my guest Wi-Fi. That act had given my system a direct look at her laptop's hardware ID, and Ivy had used that opening. She had recovered the original draft version of the minutes of the Mercer family meeting. It was a step-by-step plan. Creation timestamp, Saturday, 11:52 p.m. Author Derek C. Last edit Sunday, 2:03 a.m. The edits were chilling. The original draft was a list of requests. The final version, edited just minutes before the fake notary ceremony, was a list of allocations. Derek had changed the language from asking to taking. "He's not just a participant, he's the architect," I said. "He's the one who knows title law. He's the one who knew to form the LLC. He's the one who found Shay. And he's the one who bought the stamp," Rhea added. My team tracked the envelope Cole gave Shay. It had a tracking number on the back, visible in the thermal footage. It was from a legal supply e-commerce site. I cross-referenced the order. Derek Kane bought a custom, expedited, Notary Public, Shay Doyle ink cartridge and stamp set. It was delivered to a post office box in town on Friday afternoon, just before you went into the hospital. He didn't just hire a fake notary, he equipped her. "Atticus," I said, my voice cold. "I want the hearing, not Tuesday, not Wednesday. I want an emergency hearing today." "Already filed," Atticus said. Ex-parte application for a TRO with a mandatory surrender of keys, based on active, ongoing fraud and criminal conspiracy. The judge is reviewing the packet from Rhea and Ivy right now. I expect a call any minute. Good. I turned to Leah on the screen. Leah, the narrative. It's a dumpster fire, Leah said bluntly. Bethany's live stream has 500,000 views. The hashtag Haley Morgan is trending. The narrative is rich daughter evicts cancer-stricken mother. By the way, she's telling people Marion has cancer. She does not have cancer, I said, my voice flat. Doesn't matter. It's the story. We can't fight back with no she doesn't. We have to fight back with a better, truer story. We need to go public. Haley, and we need to go hard. No, I said. Not yet. You will prepare a press kit. You will include the diagram of the trust, the full executed trust document. You will include a timeline of the purchase. You will include redacted photos of the $1.2 million wire transfer I made from my account, and my account alone. You will include the HOA's rejection of the Mercer Family LLC. You will include Dr. Pace's affidavit of my surgery, but you will release nothing until I give the word. Haley, we are losing the media war, Leah argued. We are not fighting a media war. We are executing a legal strategy. I will not have this tried on social media. I will have this tried in a court. Their narrative only works in the dark. We will bring the documents. That's it. Leah nodded, though she looked unhappy. Your call? The kit will be ready in an hour. The final piece. Atticus, I said. While we wait for the judge, I have one more thing. My utilities. He grinned. Already on it. I called Red Will Power and Water. I informed them their services were being used to facilitate an active criminal occupation. I sent them the police report. I've never heard a supervisor move so fast. They are shutting off all power and water to 422 Northwind Point. Effective. 9 minutes ago. On cue. I pulled up the camera feeds on my laptop. The interior cameras, which were plugged into the wall, were dead. Black screens. The exterior cameras, running on a separate solar-powered battery backup, were still live. The house was dark. The Wi-Fi was down. No more live streams. They are now trespassing, I said. In the dark, with no water, and no internet, how long do you think they'll constructively possess a house with no flushing toilets? Atticus's desk phone buzzed. He picked it up. Vale. Yes, Your Honor. Yes, we have it all. Understood. Thank you. He hung up, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. Emergency hearing, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Judge Rowena Blake. She has reviewed our packet, and she is deeply concerned by the allegations of notary fraud. Good, I said. Now, there's one last thing I need. I stood up. Ignoring the pull of my stitches, I walked to the high-security document safe in the corner of Atticus's office. He was my lawyer, but I was also his compliance director. I had my own encrypted, biometric safe here for my most sensitive original documents. I pressed my thumb to the scanner. It clicked open. Haley, what is that? Atticus asked. I pulled out a single, blue-backed document, bound with a red ribbon. It was an original, wet ink signature counterpart. Atticus, I said, you and I created the Northwind Irrevocable Trust. It is a masterpiece. It's ironclad, he agreed. But you've only ever seen the main body. You've never seen this. I held it up. The cover page read, The Northwind Irrevocable Trust, Appendix C. This, I said, is the Mercer Clause. It's the one part of the fortress I built that I hoped I would never, ever have to show anyone. Atticus stared at the document, his legal mind clearly racing. What? He said. Does Appendix C do? It's my failsafe, I replied, tucking it into my briefcase. It's the part that ensures, no matter what happens, they don't just lose, they lose everything. The power and water being cut was not a checkmate. It was, for my mother, an invitation to martyrdom. With no lights, no internet, and no running water. They were forced to leave the house, but they didn't leave the property. They retreated to the U-Haul, a rolling monument to their failed ambition, and used their phone's data plans to launch a full-scale media assault. On Tuesday morning, Marion, looking artfully distressed and wrapped in a cashmere throw I recognized as my own, appeared live via video on Lake Life Local, the area's most popular morning talk show. "I just don't understand," she wept, her voice cracking. The host, a woman with a face full of sympathetic concern, listened raptly. I am a mother. My daughter is sick. She's confused. We were just trying to hold the family together. We built this house with her, with our love, and now," she dabbed her eye, "now these lawyers, these strangers, have turned her against us. They've thrown us out. I just want my daughter back." She was brilliant. She was a cornered animal, and she had come out fighting, not with claws, but with tears. The most effective weapon in her arsenal. The show's comment boards lit up. "Who is this monstrous daughter, Bethany?" Not to be outdone. Followed up. From the relative comfort of their U-Haul, she began uploading the videos she had filmed before the power went out. The main event was a 20-minute, pre-edited tour of her new family home. "Here's Mom's and Dad's new suite," she chirped, panning across my bedroom, my things already shoved into a corner. "And this gorgeous room with the amazing light will be Cole's studio. We've just lived here forever. You know, it's always felt like ours. It's just right." My phone was vibrating so hard, it nearly fell off my lawyer's desk. Leah Boone, my PR rep, was on a video call, her face a thundercloud. "Okay, Haley," Leah said, her voice stripped of all pleasantries. "I've been respectful of your no-media strategy. That strategy is now malpractice. Bethany's video just hit 100,000 shares. Marion's betrayed mother clip is the #1 segment on the station's website. We are not losing. We have lost. What do you want to do?" "Leah," I asked, my voice quiet. "I want to release the entire file. I want to carpet bomb them with the truth. The notary, the LLC, the fraud, the drone footage." "No," I said. "No carpet bombing. A single, surgical strike. You said you needed a better story. We will give them one fact. One, that's it." I forwarded her the file. Item 09 Everfield Medical, Inpatient Services Invoice. Leah went silent as she opened it. "Haley, this is... Oh my God. Post it," I said. "Just this. Just that. And the statement from Dr. Pace, no commentary, no accusations, just the documents. Let them speak for themselves." Leah's response was a work of art. She didn't post it on my feeds. She sent it, as an anonymous, verified tip, to the one investigative reporter at the largest paper in the state, the one who had already started to question the story. By Tuesday afternoon, the narrative fractured. The new story was simple. It was just a single, split-screen image. On the left, a close-up of my hospital invoice, patient Haley Morgan, procedure ovarian cystectomy, service item, general anesthesia, 4.55 hours, date and time of service. Sunday, 0:30 a.m., 05:00 a.m., on the right. A close-up of the fraudulent gift transfer document, notarized and signed by Haley Morgan, date and time of notarization, Sunday, 2:17 a.m. Below the image was a short, dry, devastating statement from the hospital's administrator. "We can confirm Ms. Haley Morgan was an inpatient at Everfield Medical and in a state of post-operative, medically induced incapacitation at the time the document in question was allegedly signed." The story wasn't Mean Daughter anymore. The new, and much more interesting, story was The Midnight Notary. The questions started: who was Shay Doyle? Why did a family meeting happen at 2 a.m? How do you sign a document while you are, verifiably, unconscious? The walls, which my family had tried to build around my house, were now closing in on them. The Northwind HOA, now legally covered. Sent a blistering official notice via a process server who found my family in the U-Haul. They were fined $5,000 for the unapproved replacement of the locks, $2,000 for the destruction of landscaping, and $10,000 for the fraudulent residency application. They were barred from the property, permanently, at Grayline Title Services, Derek's employer. The email Atticus had sent had worked its way up to the general counsel. Derek received a formal, terrifying email from his own compliance department. Subject urgent, internal review and suspension now. You are hereby placed on administrative leave, pending an investigation into alleged ethics violations and the potential misuse of proprietary company tools. For Cole, the news that his Mercer Legacy house was a fraud and that he was now living in a U-Haul had reached his creditors. The text to his phone became frantic, then threatening. The bridge loan had just collapsed, and the people he owed money to were no longer amused. The alliance was broken. The first to crack was Frank. My father called me late Tuesday night. He wasn't in the U-Haul. The call was from a blocked number. "Haley," he whispered. "Haley, this has all gone too far. Your mother, she's not listening. It's a mess." "Yes, Dad," I said, my voice weary, all the fight gone, leaving only the cold steel. "It is. Can't we just fix this?" he pleaded. "You know, in the family, talk to your mother, call off the lawyers. We can just talk. I'll tell them to pack." "There is no family to fix this. Dad, you were all a family when you stood in my kitchen and let Derek change my locks. You were a family when you watched Marion sign a document she knew was a lie. The time for talking is over. The time for family is over. Haley, please," he begged, and I heard something I'd never heard before, real fear. "There is one way out, for you," I said, making a split-second decision. "You are not the architect. You are just the witness. If you want to avoid being named in the permanent restraining order, if you want to avoid being deposed in the fraud investigation, you have one chance. Get your suitcase, walk out of that U-Haul, get in your car, and drive away. If you are not on that property when the judge calls your name, I will not call you to the stand. She'll be furious," he whispered. "I don't care," I said. "You have 1 hour." I hung up and opened my gate camera feed. The U-Haul was just visible. Parked on the road outside my property, I watched. I waited. For 30 agonizing minutes. Nothing. Then, the side door of the U-Haul opened. My father, Frank, emerged. He was carrying a single, small suitcase. He didn't look back. He walked to his old sedan, parked behind the truck. Before he got in, he stopped. He looked up the drive, up toward my house, directly at the gate camera. I couldn't see his face clearly in the dark, but I felt it. I felt the weak, desperate, pathetic apology. He got in his car, started the engine, and drove away. Atticus called me at 8 a.m., Wednesday. "It's set," he said. "Judge Blake has read the file. She's read the news. She is displeased. She has granted our emergency hearing. Tomorrow morning, Thursday, 9 a.m., sharp." The night before the hearing, I was in a sterile hotel room near the courthouse, trying to get the first real sleep I'd had in a week. I had taken a pain pill, and the world was just beginning to soften at the edges. My phone lit up on the nightstand, a text message, from Marion. Her first direct contact. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea. It was a final, desperate gambit. "They're all gone. Haley, it's just me. I'm the only one left fighting for this family. You can stop this. You won't, though, because you won't dare let everyone know what's in that appendix. You won't dare." I sat up. The painkiller fog vanished. She knew. Of course she knew. She had overplayed her hand. She thought it was her trump card. She had no idea it was my trigger. Her text message was a confession. It lit up my hotel room. A single, glowing beacon of her catastrophic arrogance. You won't dare. She thought she had me trapped. She thought she had found the one flaw in my fortress, the one lever she could pull. She thought I would be forced to negotiate with her to save my house from my own trap. She was, as she had been her entire life, wrong. She had mistaken my shield for a shared prison. I held her message up in the dark, and for the first time, I understood her entire, pathetic, intricate plan. It was all about Appendix C. When I built the Northwind Irrevocable Trust, Atticus and I designed a fortress. But after the Airbnb incident, I realized a fortress wasn't enough. My family didn't just want to visit. They wanted to own. They believed my success was their property. I needed a failsafe. I needed a scorched earth protocol. Atticus and I drafted it in a single afternoon. Appendix C. The No Relatives Clause. It was a simple, brutal piece of legal code. It stipulated that if any of my first-degree relatives defined by name as Marion, Frank, Cole, or Bethany attempted to reside, occupy, or otherwise claim ownership, access, or constructive possession of the property without my written, notarized consent, I, as trustee, would have the sole, unilateral right to enact an immediate and irreversible action. I could, with a single signature, dissolve the trust's primary holding and transfer the entire property, the house, the boat, the land, all of it, for the sum of $1, to the women at the Lake Foundation. The foundation was my passion project, the one I had been funding for 2 years, the one I had been speaking about in Gus's video clip. It was a nonprofit I had established to provide restorative retreats for female survivors of trauma. The clause was, in effect, a self-destruct button. If my family tried to take the house from me, they would lose it, not to me, but to a group of strangers, to a cause. It ensured that their greed would gain them nothing but the satisfaction of knowing they had also taken it from me. It was mutual assured destruction, and I had hidden it. I had never told them. I had never wanted to. It was not a threat. It was a fire extinguisher. I had built the Lakehouse to heal from the chaos of my youth, not to create a new battlefield. I hoped I would live my entire life and never once have to look at that blue-backed document again. But Marion knew. Her text message confirmed it. How the city apartment. It had to be. When they were running their illegal hotel, they had access to everything. My mail, my desk, my old laptop. I remembered, with a sickening lurch, that Bethany had my Netflix password. And in her typical, lazy fashion, she had assumed it was my password for everything. My old, secondary email account, the one I used for personal correspondence, had the same login. My mother must have found it. Snooping through my files, my digital life, she must have come across the email chain with Atticus, the one with the subject line, Reappendix C Draft. She had known about my failsafe for years, and now, her whole desperate, insane plan clicked into place. The U-Haul, the 72-hour fantasy, the Mercer legacy allocation. It wasn't about winning in court. Marion wasn't that stupid. She knew a forged document wouldn't stand up. The plan was to force a negotiation. This was her psychological endgame. She believed that by squatting, by creating a public, messy, civil dispute, she would drag me to a bargaining table. She would force my hand. Her logic was simple. Haley will be faced with 2 choices. Choice: fight us in court. Activate Appendix C and lose the house forever to her foundation. Choice B. Compromise. Her goal was to force choice B. She imagined a scene where I, terrified of losing my $1.2 million asset, would say, Okay, stop this, I'll let you have weekends. I'll give Cole the boathouse. Just, let's settle. The constructive possession was her leverage. The fake notarized document was her opening bid. The 72-hour deadline was her ticking clock. And she believed that Appendix C was my weakness, not hers. She believed I would never, ever pull that trigger. She was betting my entire house that I was not as ruthless as she was. This was why they had planned a family meeting. This was why they brought Shay. Their real plan wasn't just to steal the house with a forged signature. It was to film me, in a state of distress, agreeing to their terms, to get me on camera voluntarily signing a new document one Derek surely had drafted that revoked Appendix C entirely. The surgery had ruined their timeline. It had forced them to accelerate, to move in while I was unconscious, to rely on their fraudulent transfer document as their only weapon. My phone buzzed again. A secure message from Rhea Calder. Haley, you need to see this. Found it tucked under a floorboard in the boathouse when I was doing the final sweep for the sheriff. It was an inventory photo of a small, black, external hard drive. A minute later, a video file appeared in my inbox. It was my voice. "This lake is ours." It was the clip from Gus's barbecue. But it was different. It was edited. The audio was sweetened. The camera angle was tight, cutting out the faces of the Foundation members I was speaking to. Then, it cut to black. Then, it played again, and again. A perfect, malicious loop. "This lake is ours. This lake is ours. This lake is ours." They hadn't just captured the moment. They had manufactured it. They had pre-cut their evidence to use against me, to prove my verbal promise in court. This hard drive was their toolkit, full of their lies, their plans, their scripts. I looked at the hard drive file, and then at Marion's text. "You won't dare." I had a choice. I could walk into that courtroom tomorrow and do what she expected. I could use Appendix C as a threat. I could drop it on the judge's desk like a bomb. Prove my family was trying to steal from me and force a settlement. Or I could win. I could win on the merits. I could win based on their actions, not my reactions. I could expose their conspiracy, their fraud, their forgery, their lies, piece by piece, and I could leave my own failsafe, my own secret, completely out of it. I would not let her define my victory. I would not let her trap me into using the one thing I had built to protect myself. I would prove that the fortress walls were strong enough on their own. I called Atticus. It was nearly midnight. "She knows," I said. "Marion knows about Appendix C. She just texted me. That's what this has all been about. She's trying to force me to negotiate, to revoke it." Atticus was silent for a long moment. "That is a level of psychological warfare I hadn't anticipated. It's a trap. She's betting you'll trade the appendix for the house." "She's right," I said. "What?" "She's right. I'm not activating it. I'm not even mentioning it. It stays in the safe." "Haley," Atticus said, his lawyer brain spinning. "It's our ace. We could end this in 5 minutes. We file it with the court, and she's exposed. It's leverage." "No," I said, my voice final. "I am not leveraging. I am not negotiating. I am not playing her game. We are going to court tomorrow, and we are going to win because they are criminals. We will win with their forgery, not my trust. We will win with their fake notary, their bribery, their edited video, their metadata, their lies. We will win with the truth. I would not be the daughter who took her family's inheritance away. I would be the woman who proved they had no claim to it in the first place." "Okay," Atticus said, and I could hear the shift in his voice. He was no longer a strategist. He was a prosecutor. "Okay, no appendix. We go in clean. What's the witness list?" "Ironclad," he said. "We lead with Dr. Alistair Pace, confirming you were on an operating table. We follow with the state's foremost notary expert, who will testify that Shay's stamp is a joke and the 2:17 a.m. signing is a criminal violation. Then we have Gus Halloran, our man on the ground. We have the HOA president to testify about the fraudulent LLC, and we have Rhea Calder to present the drone footage, the thermal image cache exchange, and the hard drive of their greatest hits video." "And Leah?" "Agreed. We are in total radio silence. She's not even at the courthouse tomorrow. We let the documents speak. We let the affidavits do the work. The first thing the world will hear is the judge's gavel." I ended the call and stood up. My stitches pulled. A dull ache that was nothing compared to the sharp, cold clarity in my head. I walked to the hotel window. I was high up, and in the distance, I could just make out the dark, unmoving expanse of Northwind Lake. It was flat. It was calm. It was a perfect black mirror. I looked at that water, so still, and I knew, tomorrow, everything would break. The courtroom of Judge Rowena Blake was silent, suffocatingly so. It was a room of dark wood, old books, and no sympathy. Judge Blake was known for two things: her encyclopedic knowledge of property law and her absolute zero tolerance for social media drama, a phrase she was rumored to have used in a prior ruling. She was, in short, the worst possible audience for my mother's performance. My family, or at least the remaining members of the conspiracy, sat at the opposing table: Marion, Bethany, and Derek. Cole was conspicuously absent, their lawyer, a man named Kenner with a cheap suit and a sheen of sweat on his upper lip, rose to his feet. "Your Honor," Kenner began, his voice attempting a note of mournful tragedy, "this is not a legal matter, but a family one, a misunderstanding. My client, Marion Mercer, she is the spiritual co-founder of this property. She was her daughter's first startup investment, emotionally and financially. I gripped the table, the $8,000 co-signed credit card, paid off 6 years ago. This house," Kenner continued, warming to his theme, "was built on a verbal promise, a promise that a family would be a family. My clients are not trespassers. They were home." He motioned to a stack of papers. "We are submitting the minutes of the Mercer family allocation meeting and the fully executed, notarized gift transfer document, signed by Ms. Morgan this past Sunday, turning the property over to the family." He slid the documents to the bailiff. This was their entire case motion, and a single, fraudulent piece of paper. Atticus rose. He did not look at them. He addressed the bench, his voice a calm, clinical instrument. "Your Honor, we object to the admission of these documents, not on one ground, but on 4. They are fraudulent. They are fabricated. They were executed as part of a conspiracy, and they are, frankly, a criminal offense." Judge Blake raised an eyebrow. "Those are significant allegations. Mr. Vale, we will prove them, Your Honor, in sequence. First, the signature on that gift transfer. It is a forgery." Atticus gestured to a large screen. "We have Dr. Alistair Pace, Chief of Surgery at Everfield Medical." My doctor's face appeared, clear and serious. "Dr. Pace," Atticus said, "can you confirm for the court the medical status and location of my client, Haley Morgan, at 2:17 a.m. this past Sunday?" Dr. Pace looked at his notes. "I can, at 02:17 hours, Ms. Morgan was an inpatient in our post-anesthesia care unit. She was approximately 2 hours post-op from a major internal procedure. She was, at that specific time, under the influence of intravenous fentanyl and recovering from general anesthesia. She was medically and physically incapable of consenting, reading, or even signing her name to a discharge form, let alone a complex property transfer." A murmur went through the small gallery. "Thank you, Doctor," Atticus said. "So, the signature is an impossibility. Second, the notarization itself." He called his next witness, an expert on state notary law. She was crisp, all business. "This document is a masterclass in fraud," the expert testified, holding up a copy of their transfer. "I identified 5 fundamental violations. 1. The signer was not present. 2. The time of the signing, 2:17 a.m., is so far outside reasonable practice as to be a primary indicator of fraud. 3. The notary's commission, belonging to a Shea Doyle, was permanently revoked by this state 11 months ago for prior acts of fraud. 4. The stamp itself appears to be a counterfeit, based on the font weighting. 5. There is no corresponding entry in any official notary journal." Atticus let the testimony settle. A fake signature, on a fake document, by a fake notary. Now, let's address the intent. He called Rhea Calder. Rhea was sworn in, her face impassive. "I was conducting surveillance on the property at the request of the HOA," she stated. "And what did you observe, Ms. Calder?" "I observed the forcible replacement of the locks. I observed the deputies arriving, and I observed this." The monitors in the courtroom lit up. We were all watching the grainy, black and white thermal footage from her drone. It showed the boathouse deck, the spot my cameras couldn't reach. We saw 2 heat signatures, Cole and Shay Doyle. We saw my brother hand her a thick white envelope. And then, the audio. Scratchy but undeniable. Shay. This is risky. At this hour, without her here. Cole. Just sign the damn thing. Derek says the signature is all that matters. Sign it so we hit the timeline. Hit the timeline. The words hung in the air. A perfect, concise confession. This was about their constructive possession clock. I looked at Derek. His face was white. As a title services employee, he knew exactly what conspiracy to commit wire fraud meant. Atticus was not done. He was building a wall, brick by evidentiary brick. We submit the police report from Redwill County, citing forcible entry and destruction of property. We submit the affidavit from the Northwind HOA, confirming their denial of the Mercer Family LLC application, which was filed by Derek Kane a week before my client's surgery. And finally, Atticus said, placing a heavy binder on the judge's desk, we submit the controlling document for the asset in question, the Northwind Irrevocable Trust. Judge Blake scanned the document on her monitor. I am looking at Article 4, Section 2. Mr. Vale. No family occupancy without written consent. That is correct, Your Honor. Kenner, their lawyer, was sputtering. But the promise, Your Honor, the verbal promise. They have a video. Bethany, her face a mask of desperation, held up her phone until the bailiff ordered her to put it down. A video, Judge Blake asked. Her patience clearly gone, she looked at me. Ms. Morgan, did you promise your family this house? I stood, my stitches pulled. A sharp reminder of what this cost. No, Your Honor, I did not. The video is a lie, Bethany shouted. The video, I said, my voice cutting through hers, is a 10-second clip, deliberately edited from a longer conversation. They are skilled at taking things out of context. The we and us I was referring to was the women at the Lake Foundation, my nonprofit partner. On that point, Your Honor, Atticus interjected, Ms. Calder's investigation recovered this. He held up an evidence bag containing the external hard drive from the boathouse. This drive contains the edited video file, ready for distribution. Created by Derek Kane 3 weeks ago, it is a manufactured piece of evidence, designed to perpetrate a fraud. We ask that this hard drive be sealed and submitted to the court for full forensic examination. The room was silent. Marion's case, her spiritual co-founding, her verbal promise, her notarized document had been clinically, totally, and publicly dismembered. Judge Rowena Blake stared at the evidence list. She looked at Derek, who was visibly trembling. She looked at Bethany, who was staring at the floor, all her influencer bravado gone. And then, she looked at my mother. She took off her reading glasses and set them down. Her voice was quiet, but it sliced through the room. Mr. Kenner, sit down. He sat. Marion Mercer, the judge said. My mother, summoning one last, desperate performance, looked up, her eyes wide, attempting to project wounded innocence. Judge Blake leaned forward. She asked her one question, just one. Did you know the notary was invalid? Judge Blake's question hung in the courtroom, an unexploded bomb. Did you know the notary was invalid? My mother, Marion, looked at the judge, and for the first time, her mask of maternal grief slipped. She was, for a fraction of a second, just a woman who had been caught, but the performance was too deep to abandon. She composed herself, her hand fluttering to her chest. Your Honor, she said, her voice trembling. I don't understand these things. Lawyers, commissions. I'm a mother. I trusted Derek. She faltered. I just trusted that the paperwork was a formality, a way to honor Haley's wishes. So you are stating you believed it to be a valid legal proceeding? Judge Blake pressed. Yes, of course we had a family meeting. We all signed. Mrs. Mercer, you are under oath, Atticus said, his voice quiet but sharp, rising to his feet. And I would advise you to answer the next question very carefully. Had you, or your son-in-law, Derek Kane, had any contact with Shay Doyle prior to 2:17 in the morning on Sunday? Marion's eyes darted to Derek, who was staring at his hands. Her lawyer, Kenner, stood up. Objection, Your Honor. My client can't be expected to recall. Overruled. Sit down, Judge Blake snapped. Answer the question, Mrs. Mercer. I don't recall, Marion said, her voice small. Then allow me to refresh your memory, Atticus said, turning to the judge. Your Honor, we were prepared to present this in the final hearing, but given the witnesses' lack of recall, we have a sworn, notarized affidavit from Miss Shay Doyle, secured by her own counsel late last night. The courtroom went electric. Kenner, their lawyer, looked genuinely stunned. They had been abandoned by their own accomplice. Your Honor, Atticus continued, Miss Doyle has confessed. She states that she was approached by Derek Kane at that table 3 weeks ago. He hired her, knowing her commission was revoked. Precisely because it was revoked, he wanted a notary who would not ask questions and would not show up in any state log. She has testified, under penalty of perjury, that Derek Kane paid her $5,000 in cash to be available at an unspecified time that weekend to witness a family agreement. She has also testified that she was not present when my mother signed, nor was my client. This is a lie, Derek shouted, lurching to his feet. She's trying to save herself. And you're not, Mr. Kane, Atticus countered, his voice like a whip. Your Honor, to support Miss Doyle's confession, we have the metadata from the file on the hard drive, the minutes of the Mercer meeting document, authored by Derek C. It was finalized at 2:03 a.m. The boathouse camera, the one you saw, showed Cole Mercer handing Miss Doyle her envelope of cash at 2:12 a.m., and the fake notarization was stamped at 2:17 a.m. This was not a meeting. This was a conspiracy, timed to the minute, to create a fraudulent paper trail. Judge Blake's face was thunderous. She stared at Derek. Mr. Kane, you are an officer of the title industry. You will have a chance to explain this timeline to the State Ethics Board. Sit down and be silent. Derek crumpled into his chair. Marion was visibly shaking, and then, from the back of the courtroom, a new voice. It's true. Every head turned. My father, Frank, was standing by the main door. He was in his traveling clothes, his old sedan parked in the courthouse lot. He held his phone in his hand. Frank, Marion whispered, her voice a gasp. Your Honor, my father said, walking slowly down the aisle. I'm Frank Morgan. I'm her husband. And I can't. He looked at me, and his eyes were not apologizing. They were just empty. He had finally reached his limit. Your Honor, he said, addressing Judge Blake, I wasn't there for all of it. I left, but they won't stop. Marion, she wouldn't stop. He held up his phone. She sent this to all of us. After the police left, after the power was cut, I have the texts. Atticus looked at me, his eyes wide. This was not his doing. This was the final, messy, pathetic collapse of a broken man. What did the text say? Mr. Morgan, Judge Blake asked, her voice softening just a fraction. She wrote, He's gone. Frank is a coward, but we are not. We just have to hold out. We just need to hit the 72 hours. We stay until tomorrow, and the law will be on our side. We have to be strong. Don't let her win. Coddle her if you have to, but hold this house. He read it in a monotone. The entire courtroom heard it. The constructive possession plan, the 72-hour timeline, all in my mother's own words. Thank you, Mr. Morgan, Judge Blake said. You may be seated. He sat, alone, in the back pew. The dam had broken. Bethany, who had been rocking back and forth, suddenly let out a strangled sob. "He doesn't know," she shrieked, pointing at Frank. "He wasn't even there. It was Derek. Derek said it was all legal, and she pointed at Marion. "She said Haley would want us to. She said Haley was confused, that the lawyers were the ones doing this. And the email, Bethany," I said, my first time speaking directly to her. "The one from my lawyer, 5 years ago." Bethany's head snapped toward me, her face pale, streaked with mascara. "What? What email?" "The one about the Netflix password," I said, my voice low. "The one you used to get into my private emails, the one where you found Appendix C." It was a guess, but it was an educated one. Bethany just stared, her mouth open. And then, the confession, bubbling out of her panic. I didn't mean to. I saw the password. It was the same I was just looking. I saw the emails. Northwind Trust. I told Mom. I told her Haley had a secret plan, a kill switch, to give the house away. I was trying to protect the family. She had admitted it. In open court, unprompted, she had admitted to the wire fraud. She had admitted to the entire motive. The room was silent. Marion just closed her eyes. It was over. Atticus stood, calm in the center of my family's self-destruction. "Your Honor," he said, "as Ms. Bethany Morgan has so helpfully confirmed, the entire basis for this occupation was a conspiracy to defraud my client and the trust, born from information obtained through federal wire fraud. To close this loop, I would like to play, in its entirety, the unedited video from Mr. Halloran's barbecue in March." He hit the play button. The courtroom monitor filled with my face. At Gus's party, I was happy, I was healthy, and I was talking to the women from my foundation. "So thrilled to host the first annual Survivors Retreat here this summer. This house is for you." He let it play. The context was undeniable. Judge Blake had seen enough. She raised her hand. "Stop the video." She picked up her gavel. "This court finds," she said, her voice ringing with icy authority, "that there is zero, absolutely no basis, for the respondent's claim of constructive possession. The claim is not just dismissed, it is fraudulent on its face." Gavel. "This court grants the petitioner's request for an extended temporary restraining order, Marion Mercer, Bethany Kane, Derek Kane, and Cole Mercer are hereby ordered to surrender all keys, all copies of keys, all digital codes, and all garage door openers to the plaintiff's counsel within the hour." Gavel. "This court finds that the respondents have acted in a manner of concerted, willful deceit. This is not a family misunderstanding. This is a conspiracy to commit fraud." Atticus stood. "Your Honor, one more request. Given the respondents' proven use of social media to defame my client and perpetuate their fraud, we ask for a temporary injunction barring them from any and all public comment on this case, online or otherwise. This includes all live streams, all videos, and an order to remove all existing defamatory content within 24 hours. Judge Blake looked at Bethany, whose face was a picture of digital withdrawal. "Granted, Ms. Kane, Mr. Kane, Mrs. Mercer. If I see so much as a single hashtag related to this case, a single video, a single post, I will have you back in this courtroom for contempt, and you will not like the outcome. Is that clear?" They all nodded, numb. My mother, beaten, made one last, desperate play. She stood, ignoring her lawyer. "Your Honor," she said, tears now streaming down her face, the performance back, but broken. I just wanted my family to be together. I wanted us to be united, by the lake. Is that so wrong?" Judge Rowena. Blake looked at my mother for a long time. "Mrs. Mercer," she said, her voice devoid of all warmth. "Reunions do not begin with fake locks, And unity does not start with a fake seal. She stood. This hearing is adjourned. This court will deliver its final, written verdict on damages, fees, and referrals for criminal prosecution within 48 hours. She struck the gavel, and the sound was like a door slamming shut. The 48 hours were a lifetime. I spent them not in a hotel, but in my own city apartment, the one they hadn't been able to touch. I sat in silence, my laptop open, my phone on the desk. I watched my fortress hold. On the morning of the final verdict, the courtroom was different. It was smaller, more crowded. The local press was there, drawn by the scent of a fraud scandal involving $1 million property. My family, what was left of it, sat at their table, looking diminished. Derek was gone. His lawyer had arrived to represent him in absentia. Citing a personal emergency, Cole was also gone, rumored to have already left the state. It was just Marion and Bethany, alone, flanked by their sweating but unhappy lawyer. Judge Blake entered, and the room went silent. She did not look at them. She looked at her desk, where 2 new piles of documents sat. "Before this court renders its final judgment," Judge Blake said, her voice like iron, "I have reviewed the final, stipulated submissions from plaintiff's counsel. They have been verified." She motioned to Atticus. He stood. "Your Honor, for the final record," Atticus said, "we submitted the full forensic analysis of the hard drive recovered from the boathouse. The State Cybercrimes Unit has confirmed it contains 3 separate video files, all edited and all titled Promise Clip, along with a 2-page Word document titled Persuasion Script, detailing a plan to convince Haley to see reason during a family meeting." He held up a second paper. "We have submitted a letter from the General Counsel of Grayline Title Services, confirming the immediate termination of Derek Kane for gross violations of professional ethics and suspicion of criminal fraud." He held up a third. "We have submitted the financial records, a bank transfer from Cole Mercer to Shay Doyle for $5,000, matching the serial numbers on the bills inside the envelope captured by Ms. Calder's drone." A fourth. "We have submitted the login records from the Lakehouse Wi-Fi, provided by the HOA, showing Bethany Kane's laptop identified by its hardware ID accessing Ms. Morgan's private email server on no less than 6 separate occasions in the past year." And then, a fifth. Rhea Calder had taken the stand one last time to authenticate a photo. "Finally," Atticus said, "we have this." He put the image on the main screen. It was a time-stamped photo from Rhea's surveillance. "Friday, 5:18 p.m., 2 hours before I was scheduled for surgery. It was Bethany, pulling something from the U-Haul, a large, professionally made, wooden plaque sign. It was carved in script, 'The Mercer Legacy House.' The premeditation," Atticus stated, "is absolute. They did not think the house was theirs. They had already named it." Marion stared at the photo. Her face finally, completely, blank. The performance was over. There was no one left to perform for. "And now, Your Honor," Atticus said, his voice dropping, "we must address the why this elaborate, desperate, and criminal act. The respondents have already confessed to the how, the wire fraud, the password theft. They admitted they were motivated by a piece of information they stole. A document they believed was Ms. Morgan's weakness." He walked to his briefcase and pulled out the blue-backed document, Appendix C. "Your Honor, I am now submitting, for the court's consideration, Appendix C of the Northwind Irrevocable Trust, the No Relatives Clause." This was it. Marion's head snapped up. She knew that name. Her lawyer, Kenner, looked baffled. "Your Honor, this was not in discovery." "It is not an action, Counselor," Atticus said. "It is the motive. The appendix stipulates, in brief, that should any named first-degree relative Marion, Frank, Cole, or Bethany attempt to illegally occupy or seize control of the trust's assets, the trustee has the right to immediately dissolve the trust and transfer all assets, for $1, to the women at the Lake Foundation." A gasp went through the courtroom. They understood. My family's attempt to steal the house had by the letter of the law, given me the power to take it from them forever. Marion was staring at me, her eyes burning. This was the trap she thought she had set. She was waiting for my move. She was waiting for me to pull the trigger and lose the house myself, just to spite her. She was waiting for the mutual destruction. Atticus let the silence hang for a long, painful moment. Then he spoke. "But here is the most important fact before the court today," he said, his voice clear, addressing the judge, the press, and the room. "Ms. Morgan is not activating this clause. She has, in fact, instructed me not to. They built this conspiracy on the belief that my client would rather be blackmailed than lose her home. They were wrong. She is not seeking to punish them with a secret clause. She is seeking to protect herself with the public truth." He turned, and for a second, he looked directly at Marion. "Ms. Morgan," he said, "chooses to forgive the asset. She will not, however, forgive the fraud." He sat down. Judge Rowena Blake looked down at the ream of paper, the mountain of evidence, the entire anatomy of their failed coup. She put on her glasses. She began to read. "This court," she began, her voice formal, "finds for the petitioner, Haley Morgan, on all counts." She read for 10 minutes. It was a complete, systematic demolition. "The request for ownership by the respondents is summarily and permanently denied. The claim is found to be frivolous, vexatious, and fraudulent. This court confirms that Haley Morgan is the sole and exclusive trustee of the Northwind Irrevocable Trust, with all rights and privileges therein. This court," she continued, "hereby issues a permanent restraining order against Marion Mercer, Bethany Kane, Derek Kane, and Cole Mercer. You are barred, for life, from the property at 422 Northwind Point. You are barred from contacting, by any means, electronic or otherwise, the plaintiff, Haley Morgan. The temporary injunction on public comment is hereby made permanent. You are ordered to refrain from all public discussion, online or offline, of this case, of Ms. Morgan, or of the Northwind Trust. Violation will result in immediate criminal contempt." She paused and looked up at Marion. "It is the finding of this court that the actions of Marion Mercer, Derek Kane, and Shay Doyle constitute, on their face, a multi-part conspiracy to commit felony fraud, forgery, and wire fraud. This court is therefore referring its entire findings, and all evidence submitted, to the Red Will County District Attorney's Office for immediate criminal review." Bethany let out a small, strangled whimper. "And finally," the judge said, "on the matter of damages, the respondents, jointly and severally, are ordered to pay all of Ms. Morgan's legal fees. They are ordered to pay the fines levied by the HOA. And they are ordered to pay punitive damages for the willful and malicious nature of their actions, in an amount to be calculated by this court." She struck the gavel. It was done. In the hallway, a crush of local reporters surrounded me. I was still sore, still walking slowly, but I felt taller. "Ms. Morgan," one shouted, "your lawyer mentioned a secret clause. Were you going to give the house away?" I stopped. I looked at the camera, at the journalist, and I gave them the only answer that mattered. "I built this house to heal, not to punish," I said, my voice clear and steady. "But documents have a purpose. They protect boundaries." Across the hall, near the elevators, my mother was standing. She was being ignored by the press. Her lawyer was packing his briefcase. She was alone. She looked at me, at the cameras surrounding me. There was no performance left, no tears, no anger. There was just a cold, hollow realization. She had bet everything, and she had lost. I turned and walked away. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Gus, my neighbor, a picture of the lake, perfectly still. Lake's calm. The message read, "South winds blowing." That evening, I drove myself back. I drove past the gate, the gravel newly raked. I walked up the steps, using the new keys Atticus had made. The house was cold and silent. It smelled of stale air. I walked through the dark, my hand on the wall. until I reached the living room. I looked out the great window, at the water. It was just as Gus had said. Calm. I went through every room. A quiet, one-woman patrol. I found the label maker signs Mom-Dad. Studio piled in a trash bag. I found the empty champagne bottle in the recycling. I found the scratches on the floor from the U-Haul dolly. Physical. Surface-level damage. All of it could be fixed. I saved the boathouse for last. I walked down the path, the air cool, the south wind smelling of pine. I keyed in the new code. The door opened. I stepped inside the library. It was just as I had left it. Before. The books. The chairs. I walked to the wall and I touched the small, dark lens of the boathouse camera. The small green light was off. It was just a piece of technology. Silent and patient. It had recorded my violation, and now it would record my recovery. I took a deep breath. The first one that didn't feel tight in my chest. I opened my phone, went to the security app, and I dismissed the 147 notifications. I turned off the alerts. I closed the door, and I was home. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Please drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's connect. Don't forget to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories. Like this video, and if you want to see more stories like this one, show your support by hitting that hype button so this video can be heard by more people.